I've kind of equated it to being almost like family members, right? You live close to each other. They're like your cousin in a respect. So let's see if that works better this time around with Tim. I don't know, Tim. Everybody said they could hear you good. They could hear me good. I guess we couldn't hear each other. Can you hear me any better now or no?
Yeah, no, I'm good now. It has happened before. For some reason, if somebody tries to call me while I'm on this system with you, the volume goes way down. And even if I don't accept the call, it's very strange. But anyway.
Well, I'm glad we got you in, and you tweeted something. You know, it's funny because I talked about this topic yesterday, and you really went in depth. I talked about the number of former Clemson players that are on rosters around the country at Power 5 programs, etc. And it kind of came off the backs of the Ches Malusi conversation. And I mentioned Hunter Johnson before, but you really went into it. And I think you said there were 9 guys at least right now that you could think of right off the top of your head that are playing elsewhere this year. I mean, that's so impressive.
Yeah, I went off of there's a website that's an NFL scouting site called ourlads.com, which does depth charts on everybody. And so I remembered the guys who had transferred. Yeah, I counted 9 guys who transferred out of Clemson who are starting, not just on 2 deeps, they're starting for their new teams coming up here in the first game. Ironically, one of the guys who's not was the 5-star running back Bowman down at Florida. He's listed as a reserve, and there's a lineman at Florida who's not going to start. But, yeah, 9 guys, 3 in the Big Ten. Couple of quarterbacks, 3 defensive backs. Dabo is populating the entire football landscape with other players.
Well, and tonight, of course, you think about Niles Pinckney in Minnesota going to be taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes. So one of a weird scenario in that Niles Pinckney will have played Ohio State in back-to-back ball games. That's one of those rare occurrences. I guess. Yeah,
back-to-back games with different teams. That makes it even stranger. But we get Chase Bryce at quarterback too for App State tonight.
No, that's a good point. And I just think about the guys and the names. I mean, that's the other thing. Like when Kyler McMichael, who's been at North Carolina now for a while, commits to Clemson, it's a big deal. Darion Kendrick, it's a big deal. I mean, it's not like these are just some other guys. I mean, these were players that all have had at one point or another really in their career some type of impact. I mean, there's ones here or there that maybe didn't move the needle for Clemson Tiger fans, but you're not throwing out names that people don't know. And that tells you a lot about the guys that he's brought into this program.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, how Clemson's been successful here, especially the last 6 years. So when the other teams get a transfer from Clemson, it sparks the interest in the new fan base that they're going to. So that has a lot to do with it. But especially interested to see what Malusi can do. He had about a 5.6 average at Clemson. I think he had 4 touchdowns last year. Just wasn't going to get as much playing time with Travis Etienne around. So, but Wisconsin, which is a program that historically has liked to run the ball. So, he may get to see a good bit of action. I'll be very intrigued if he starts against Notre Dame on the 25th of September.
Tim Bourret with us here on the show that shakes the Southland again, legendary Clemson SID. And I did not, I guess with our issues, get his banner up. So there it is. Clemson historian as well. Go follow him on Twitter at Tim Bourret. And so, Tim, I got asked this question earlier on a radio show, and I'll throw it out to you. If you had to say, Swanny, here is a breakout performer for you on the offensive side of the ball, who's the guy for Tim Bourret today if you had to give us a breakout performer in this matchup against Georgia?
Will Shipley.
That's who I went with.
Did you really?
That is.
Here's where I'm coming from. I think that you might see the Tigers throw the ball to running backs a good bit in this game, and I say that because of the success that Florida had throwing the ball to running backs last year. And so given that they're going to play the same style of defense, which really puts a priority on stopping the run, I could see, Clemson throwing the guys out of the backfield. So we'll see.
The other thing too, and I'm glad you mentioned about throwing the ball in the backfield. Daboisms was asked yesterday about this Georgia defensive front, and this is the third consecutive game that Clemson has played a top 5 team, I think is the number. And so you look at how good they are on the interior. We know Clemson struggled with the run this past season, but it's a new team. It's a new, I mean, all the personnel on both sides, it's all different, but is that also possibly some strategy just from Clemson's standpoint as well to mitigate some of the things that maybe they see up front too?
Yeah, and of course, I also say that because Tony Elliott has done that when he's been the offensive coordinator. Look at all the receptions Travis Etienne had. So, I mean, that's something Clemson's been good at. And so that's something you do when you can't run the ball very well. And Georgia's had the number 1 running defense in the country the last couple of years. And so, just from that standpoint would make sense.
Yeah, I was looking at it too, telling our listeners, and I know you're a numbers guy. I mean, you'd have to go all the way back to what I think 2011 to find consecutive losses for this Clemson Tiger team. And I know it's a wraparound deal, but I'm pretty sure that was the year when Clemson lost at NC State, then at South Carolina. I think that's the last time they lost back-to-back games. But I mean, that also tells you it's been almost a decade since that's happened in Clemson's run here that Dabo Swinney's been on. What does that say about this team? Did I get the year right? Did I get the games right? Is that right?
Yeah, you did. Those were the back-to-back games, and which everybody was kind of pessimistic about the Tigers going to the ACC championship game that year because we were playing a number 3 ranked Virginia Tech team who we beat 38-10. So. You never know. But, yeah, I think Clemson's gone 127 straight games without losing back-to-back games, which is the longest streak of its kind in the country. But, yeah, that certainly says a lot. Now, but you're right. It is kind of apples and oranges when you figure it's from the end of one year to the beginning of the next because you really got 2 different teams. As Coach Swanny always says, when he starts a new season, it's a totally new team.
Now, you've been around the program a long time, Tim, and Clemson's certainly gotten comfortable with playing over there in Charlotte. Any advantage to that in your mind, just familiarity with the venue? I mean, is that real, or is that something that we in the media and the fans just like to believe is real?
Well, I think you almost look at it as one of those intangibles. When you go into a place where you're familiar and you've had success, no matter what you're doing in life, probably not outside of sports, if you have familiarity and you're comfortable in a setting, it might contribute to your overall, conference going in. But, football's not like baseball or even basketball. Basketball, you can say that where you get accustomed to the sight lines when you shoot. Baseball, obviously, your team, you can set teams to the ballpark. If you got a short porch in right field, you're going to put a lot of left-hand hitters maybe in your lineup, which the Yankees have done for years. But football, I mean, it's pretty much this, the field and the dimensions are the same. It's just the overall comfort that you might have with the facility, the locker room, or whatever. Now, of course, there is a difference. In that we have new field turf up in Charlotte. Some teams can be more comfortable, running on field turf. I remember when C.J. Spiller played, and he had a bunch of 100-yard games in a row on field turf, and he had more of his big plays, 80-yard plays on field turf than he did on regular turf, just because, they say a lot of running backs can run faster on that field turf.
Well, I know Daboisms said they're going to go over there and check it out, and part of the reason was that field turf, and I can only imagine that, there is something to it. Fortunately for Clemson, they've played on a good bit of that recently, given their success and being in some of these top venues in the country in the college football playoff. And Tim Bourret's been there for it all. He joins us every Thursday afternoon to talk about your Tigers and what's going on with them heading into the weekend. And this weekend, the matchup has really never been any bigger in my mind going into the opener. I mean, both teams, I think people will point with Clemson's opener at Auburn a few years back and matchups that they've had, maybe not necessarily in the opener, but at Texas A&M. But to have two teams who have the hopes of a college football playoff out of the gates and all of that, I mean, that's what I think is really making this one feel a lot different, because if you watch game day last weekend, I mean, Clemson and Georgia were frequently mentioned as teams in the college football playoff. I mean, that adds a little bit of that's a little extra spice on top of this whole battle, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it does, but I'm of the opinion that the loser is not out of the playoff. Clemson, what if we got into the playoff at least 3 times with a regular season loss, including last year, 19 and 18 we didn't, but 17 we did, and 16 we did. So, and even in 16 we lost a game late in the season at home. Now, there were some other dominoes that had to happen for some losses, some other contenders. But, I think most of the coaches are going into this, or the coaches on both teams, kind of going into us that this, this a loss, especially this early in the season. Now, if you're both undefeated and you're playing in the last game of the season, it probably would be loser leave town. That's why you're always going to see these games like this early in the year.
One of the final things I want to get to with you here today, Tim, I've compared, and it may be unfair to Coach Swanny at this point, but I've compared some of the philosophies he's had, and you and I may have talked about this before, but to John Wooden. And I know not necessarily this pyramid of success, but Daboisms sort of instituted, hey, win the opener, the steps that you've got to get to where you want to go. And I just think about how that maybe brings things to center for the guys. You've been around the program since 1978. I mean, do you feel like the players in that mindset and those things that he's put in, do you see it personally? Like, can you tell, is there an actual difference with that kind of stuff when it's built in and ingrained in your program?
Yeah, I think so. I think all those things are part of the, the culture. You go around the facility and there's, I call them the Daboisms that are right there on a board, right when you come outside the locker room. The pyramid of success is actually in one of the hallways, within the facility. It might not, register yet with the freshmen on day one, but over time it will, and especially with the veteran guys, kind of given their wisdom, the young guys have to see it. And I think with the veteran team, we've got 70 guys in this team that are in either their 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th years. I think those types of things are even more important and can have even more of an impact.
Final thing on that. Some people would say, oh, Daboisms can't come up with all that stuff. He doesn't come up with those things. It's not who we play, it's how we play. I mean, is he the guy, in your opinion? I mean, are most of those Daboisms Dabos? I mean, is he a deep thinker on that front, in your opinion, just from being around him?
I don't know that I'd call him a deep thinker, but he's a guy who has been around college football and big programs for a long time. And I've always told people he just has a sixth sense about, what needs to be done to motivate his team. And whether it's been his combined experience when he was out at Alabama,
So what I hear you say is that, when it's BYOG, you didn't drop that on him before the game. If we win the night, it's bring your own guts. That's all Dabo. I got
that one, I think that one came off the top of his head.
Unbelievable. And a great one. Tim, we appreciate it. Hope to see you in Charlotte on this weekend, and safe travels to you guys as you make your way up there.
We'll be there. Look forward to it.